Hey, all, welcome to the Redzone Rodeo. I am your co host, Carson,
And I'm Rob.
and we're going to be bringing to you some awesome football stuff. Uh, Talking about breaking down the conference championship games, talking about the up and coming Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the 49ers, talk about some coaching hirings, and maybe we'll sprinkle in some of those UFL news nuggets that we have come out in the past couple days and keep you guys up and informed about that. So thank you all for staying with us as we cover some things, and we'll start off by talking about the conference championship round recap. Some crazy games that happened this past Sunday. And to kind of start breaking it down, we're going to tackle the question of who deserves the most credit for the Chiefs' Super Bowl run. So, Rob, who do you think deserves the most credit for the Chiefs' Super Bowl run?
Well, I know on the last episode we talked about how we would never bet against Patrick Mahomes, but the more and more I've looked at the outcome of the game on Sunday and just the outcome of the Chiefs playoffs games in general, I'm starting to think Mahomes does not deserve all the credit or as much credit for this playoff run as he has in the past. I mean, the Chiefs only scored 17 points in their victory over the Ravens. If the Ravens had scored their season average, which was like 28 points a game, they would have won that game by a lot. They would have won it by two scores. The reason the Ravens lost is because the Chiefs defense shut down their offense and they weren't able to do anything. They weren't able to score. They weren't able to move the ball. They turned the ball over quite a few times. Without the Chiefs defense playing the way it did, if it was even an average defense and gave up like 20 points to the Ravens, that game would have been lost by the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mahomes, obviously, he had a few, Mahomes-like plays where he just did something amazing, made something happen. But honestly, I think right now, if you were to look at the Chiefs and say what's the driving force behind their playoff success so far, I'd have to say it's the defense.
Absolutely. And that defense really shut down Lamar. They did some crazy coverages that I even think left Lamar confused, especially on that one interception that he threw into triple coverage. That defense really shut down what the Ravens had going for them pretty much all season and really through the playoffs as well, especially when they played against the Texans in that second half where they kind of ran away with the game. And so like you start to look at these like breaking it down and yes, Mahomes is Mahomes, and he did some crazy stuff. The thing that comes to mind probably the most is when he had that initial scramble as the Ravens defenders were getting to him, and he just kind of like throws this like dead duck pass to Kelsey, and Kelsey just brings it on down. And that connection right there between those two individuals is really what fuels a lot of that Chiefs offense. But that Chiefs offense isn't able to capitalize on those key plays without the defense stopping the Ravens from scoring, running up to score. And we did talk about, for the longest time, even just leading up to the Chiefs playoff run, the wide receiver room could be an issue for the Chiefs. Throughout the season, we saw the problems offensively for the Chiefs. And, by only scoring 17 points, not only was that the Ravens defense holding Mahomes and Kelsey and some of those other offensive weapons to that, you know, the offense they didn't outdo themselves in terms of scoring so many points that, the Ravens just couldn't come back by. And so I absolutely agree with you, Rob. That Chiefs defense made a lot of stops and stands on key plays. Even that Zay Flowers fumble walking into the end zone, we talk about it being a pretty much one score game. If Zay Flowers holds on to that ball and it's not punched out by the Chiefs defender, that's a tie game right there. And, of course, hindsight's 2020 when you're looking back at things like that. But these key plays really stopped the Ravens' explosive offense from gaining key scores to keep them in the game, and not only just keep them in the game, but overpowering the Chiefs' offensive gains. Um, But I also would like to show some credit to the offensive line for the Chiefs as well, because throughout the game, it was kind of surprising to me the lack of the Ravens defense getting to Patrick Mahomes. And it seemed like Mahomes had all this time to throw. And of course, there were some times where he had to scramble and run. But for a lot of times, it just seemed like Mahomes just had the time in the pocket to find those receivers, to find Rice downfield, to find Kelsey, and really be able to kind of exploit this Ravens defense. And if that offensive line didn't give Mahomes the time, we could see an absolutely different game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Chiefs have had one of the best offensive lines all season long. So it's no surprise that it's continuing in the playoffs and protecting Mahomes really well. So I think that kind of begs the question then, if you look at how good their defense was and how good their offensive line was, do you think another quarterback besides Mahomes would have also won in that situation? Like, let's say you put Dak Prescott back there. Let's say you put Baker Mayfield back there. Do you think those quarterbacks also would have won that game because of how well the defense and the offensive line played? Or do you think there was something Mahomes did in that game that no other quarterback would have been able to do that led to them winning?
I absolutely think the latter. I don't think there's another quarterback out there like Mahomes. And, you have the defense going for you. You have the offensive line blocking for you, giving you enough time in the pocket. But then you also have, the finishing part of that formula, that winning formula that the Chiefs have, and that's Mahomes. When you look at those key positions on the football field, quarterback is one of those the biggest key positions, especially for an offense. And without Mahomes, if you put Dak Prescott in here, if you put someone like Baker Mayfield, I think they will do decent, but I don't think that they have what it takes to win in clutch moments. And especially, Mahomes just finds a way, his natural ability to read the football field, to make plays that were never designed for the way that they end up working out. He just has just this knack of turning disaster upside down into successful yardage, a successful play. And I honestly, there's now these kind of like debates of like, okay, well, who's better, Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes now that's going on? Or even going back to John Elway or, some of those other greats. And I think we are so fortunate in this time to see a quarterback like Mahomes because there really isn't any like him in the National Football League as we speak. And so I think you have that full equation. You have the Super Bowl caliber defense keeping your offense in despite the challenges that it's gone through. And then you have the offensive line giving Mahomes the time to really just pull plays out of a magician's hat, really, when things start to break down and plays maybe go awry. But then you have the X factor, which is Mahomes. And I think all those three, and then you add on Andy Reid's experience coaching and his success in coaching, and you have almost the perfect winning formula for a team that, even though they may have struggled in the season, you're seeing the formula starting to come together once again, like it always has, under these influences, making a big playoff push leading to the Super Bowl. But what about you, Rob? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think someone like Dak Prescott or Baker Mayfield could excel in the same amount of Mahomes, or do you think there is something special just with Mahomes?
Oh, there's absolutely something special with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you just look at his whole career. I mean, no one else has ever done that except, Tom Brady. So it's pretty special. But in this specific game, I don't know if I saw Mahomes do anything that was like so special. I'm like, man, only Mahomes could have done that. I feel like if you put a Dak Prescott or like a Lamar Jackson or an Andy Dalton, even someone like that uh, on the Chiefs, I feel like they could have also led that offense to 17 points, assuming the defense, played the same way and held the Ravens to 10. I don't know if there was some like defining moment where I'm like, wow, Mahomes is the reason they won this game. I think it was mostly their defense and their offensive line giving Mahomes a lot of time to throw. That being said, I mean, there were a few plays where it was like, wow, like the one you mentioned where he was like falling to the ground and threw that lame duck pass to Travis Kelsey. But I feel pretty confident there's at least like 5 or 10 other quarterbacks in the league right now who would have been able to lead that offense to 17 points and win that game. So, because it would even have to be 17, it could have been 13, and they would have still
Mhm.
beat them because they only scored 10 because of how well their defense played. So, I absolutely think you could have picked from any one of the best quarterbacks in the league and been like, this guy can at least get us 13 points against the Ravens.
Yeah. Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. But what Kansas City has going for them is really, and we talked about this, don't bet against Mahomes, and I honestly really do kind of believe that. It's just he just has a way to make things work in sticky situations that, most quarterbacks would feel the pressure and break, or they wouldn't be able to make the runs or see the field the way he does. And when you look on the flip side of the coin with the Ravens, how much of that game was on Lamar's shoulders? Like, do you think that Lamar's mistakes cost him the game? Of course, we talk about the Zay Flowers fumble, and that was really on the young rookie. But do you think, Rob, that the mistakes alone that Lamar made in the game against the Chiefs cost the Ravens the game?
Well, the one I keep going back to is when the Ravens had the ball. I think this was in the fourth quarter. They were driving down the field for the tying score, and then Lamar just decides to throw the ball into triple coverage. Like there's no one there except for Chiefs players. And obviously it gets intercepted. The Ravens, I have to say, they moved the ball pretty well against the Chiefs defense. It's just they never were able to do anything with it. The Chiefs defense always tightened up as soon as they got over, the 50-yard line. Uh, but that was probably the biggest mistake, and I think that was the final nail in the coffin when Lamar threw that interception. And there was really no reason for him to throw it. He had enough time left that if he just, ran the ball himself or just threw the ball away, even they could have still gone down the field and scored. He forced that throw to, no one in particular for no reason, and ultimately lost them the game that way. I think you could have come back from the Zay Flowers fumble, and honestly, I think you could have come back from the Lamar interception, but I don't think you could come back from both at the same time. So
Yeah.
after the Zay Flowers fumble, I feel like Lamar really needed to step up and play clean, mistake-free football. And he wasn't able to do that, which is ultimately why the Ravens lost.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's not on Lamar's shoulders per se, in terms of the blame for the loss, who would you blame more? Which unit then would you blame more for the Ravens' loss against the Chiefs?
Oh, well, I think it absolutely is on Lamar's shoulders. I
Oh,
think they're
okay.
collapsed entirely, and a lot of that is because of Lamar. I think their offensive coordinator was not calling his best game. I think a lot of his concepts and play calls were really simple and easy for the Chiefs defense to sniff out. Obviously, Zay Flowers fumbling the ball. It was just a very sloppy, bad performance by pretty much everyone on the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens. Outside of the, 5 catches for like 100 yards or whatever Flowers had previous to the fumble, that the entire offense was just really, really bad. And that might just be a function of also, the Chiefs defense being really, really good, but there's certainly things the Ravens offense could have done better. That if they had done better, they would have won the game. Like you mentioned before, if Zay Flowers hadn't fumbled that ball, it would have been at least a tie game.
Yeah.
Anything could have happened if the game went into overtime. So the Ravens offense really let the team down because their defense was terrible, like for the first quarter of the game, but then they really tightened up in the second quarter. And I don't think they gave up another touchdown after what, like the first or second quarter, right? They
Yeah.
were phenomenal in the second half of that game. And the Ravens offense just was not able to capitalize.
Yeah. Now, obviously, MVP only is in regards to season and season performances. But for this sake, if it did include the playoffs, would Lamar Jackson still be your MVP, Rob?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this is why it's a regular season only award because if you were going to pick an MVP based on the playoffs, it always have to be someone who was in the Super Bowl, probably on the
Hmm.
Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah.
Um, so no, Lamar would not be my MVP right now, and sadly, neither would Dak Prescott. But that's not here nor there. I think right now, if you're looking at who the MVP is, I would probably guess Mahomes would win it. If all the
Yeah.
voters were to have like a clean slate and vote again with like the postseason results included, I'd imagine Mahomes would win. Um, How about do you think Mahomes would also be the MVP if yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely put his name in the ring. And obviously I agree there's a reason why it's a season, award and not looking at the postseason because I absolutely agree. It's right. It's going to be, it would have to be a player from the Super Bowl winning team because then you'd always have the, oh, well, he did lose in the playoffs because of this. And that's why, he's not going to get it. But I find that so interesting because of course, going into the playoffs, everyone was so just big on Lamar Jackson. And, I think, that playoff record coming in where it was just one win to his four appearances in the playoffs prior to this, a playoff run. I think a lot of people had high hopes for him, especially after the Texans game. And so to just see him kind of be one of the root causes for the the Ravens kind of breakdown, of something that was super strong throughout the season. uh, how many points did they score running up the last couple of games of the season? Almost 40 plus, almost every single game. And they were against tough opponents like the 49ers, like some of those like greatly built teams, and they were scoring 40 on them. And so, then you start to look at this game in the playoffs, and the Ravens are at home too. So they had home field advantage. They had the crowd behind them. And then, the Chiefs defense just kind of shut it all down. So I think it's kind of interesting, if they did include Lamar's postseason run and honestly some of their failures, I think that the MVP choice would move on to somebody else. And that's
Sure.
I think it's super interesting. Yeah.
I absolutely
All
agree.
right, so we talked about the Ravens Chiefs game. Now let's move on to the Lions versus the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. Now, my question to you, Rob, is who took down the Lions? Was the 49ers? Of course, as the game ended, the 49ers won. But in essence, did the 49ers beat the Lions or did the Lions beat themselves?
I'm going to say the Lions beat themselves. Now, of course, I have to give full credit to the 49ers for taking advantage of the opportunities the Lions gave them in that second half to come back and not wasting them. Because once you were down 17, you have to hit pretty much every opportunity you have in order to successfully come back. And the 49ers did do that. But there's no reason they should have had those opportunities in the first place. The turnovers, the penalties, like the offensive, just complete disaster the Lions had in the second half of the game, it's inexcusable. I mean, you're 17-point lead with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line, and that's what you do. I mean, I know that the Lions obviously came really far this season from where they have been the past 30 years, and they made it to an NFC Championship game, something my beloved Cowboys haven't done in 28 years. But but at the same time, watching that collapse happen in the second half of the game, I'm like, man, this is the same old Detroit Lions. Like they find a way to like just ruin themselves in a big moment, and there's just no stopping it. I mean, I watched them do this all year long. I can think back against the Cowboys. They did the same thing to themselves where they had a great chance to win that game. And then Jared Goff had two interceptions that killed possibly scoring drives, which would have given the Lions a much stronger lead than they had. You know, Also we have to talk about the decision making. Dan Campbell going for it on a fourth down where you could have argued, maybe he should have kicked a field goal or to tie the game against the 49ers instead of not making it on fourth down and then still trailing. Same sort of conversation we had after the Lions Cowboys game, where he went for two, three times in a row after all those penalties, ended up not making it, losing the game. It's just that was not the best decision Dan Campbell has ever made. But on the same token, his aggressive decision making is a big part of why they made it all the way to the NFC Championship game this year. So I can understand what he was thinking when he went for that. I just think all the dumb mistakes they made prior to that are really what we should be looking at and saying this is why the Lions lost. I don't think them, keeping to their aggressive offensive philosophy is something that we should really criticize. It should mostly be, they shouldn't have had these turnovers. They shouldn't have had these like dumb mistakes that ended up in losing the game for them. So that's really where I would lay the blame is the Lions messing themselves up with turnovers and dumb mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is there were so many times, especially, it just really felt like it was a tale of two halves, and where the Lions, dominated the first half completely in a way that I didn't think was going to happen. I didn't think I was going to see that. The 49ers defense looked lackluster. Jared Goff seemed to just be absolutely cutting apart those defenses in terms of getting it to his receivers, his tight ends, having that ability. St. Brown, the sun god, as I like to call him, just always seemed to find a way to just get open for big gains. My boy from Iowa, Sam Laporta, making big gains. And it just seemed like everything that the Lions needed was working for them. The 49ers offense did seem to sputter out. The Lions defense seemed to shut down the top receivers and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in the first half, even though their secondary in terms of their cornerbacks seemed to be an issue going into this game. And you know, and then I remember watching the second half and I was like, what, wait a second. Like, what happened to the Lions offense? It's non-existent. They're going three and outs every single time. And oh, there comes Brock Purdy running the ball with his legs. And so absolutely, I think not only did the Lions offense that just sputtered and stopped, lost them the game because they had such a big lead. Um, but absolutely Dan Campbell's decisions, and of course people can argue me like, well, he didn't know necessarily, and I necessarily I will say I agree with Dan Campbell's decision to go for it on fourth down because of the way the momentum of the game was going. And the momentum was in the favor of the 49ers. And it seemed like every single time that you gave the 49ers the ball, they ran right down the field and they scored a touchdown. And up until that point, yes, it's a 4th and 3. So the statistics say you should go for it. The game wasn't who could kick the most field goals. The game was who could get 7 points on the board more. And especially with the way that the second half was going for the Lions in terms of things clicking on the offense for the 49ers and not so much on the offense of the Lions, I kind of agree that Dan Campbell probably felt like this may be my only opportunity to be down in the 49ers, side of the field. And so if that's the case and you're seeing the struggles on offense that has plagued the Lions all season starting to begin, that can't be a good sign for you. And especially when you were looking at the score and you were seeing the 49ers catching up to them, it almost makes sense why they would go for it. Because why would you kick the field goal, just go up 3 points, and then just give it back to the 49ers who are going to score seven again? You're not going to win the game that way if that just continues and continues and continues. You're going to be outscored. And so, yes, now looking back at it, should he have gone for the field goal? Probably. If that was the more safe option. But in the time, going for it seemed like the best interest for the Lions. Um, but I think part of that also lies on the coaching staff. Those aggressive decisions ultimately cost the Lions the game just as much as the offensive struggles did, just as much as the defense falling apart in the second half. Especially, you started to see those weaknesses again with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk cutting through the defense. And then you kind of talk about, the 49ers being able to right the ship. And I think it's tough for me to decide, okay, was it really the Lions who took down the Lions or was it the 49ers? Because I think both of them had equal roles to play in this because the 49ers, they somehow seem to do this where when we saw them against the Packers, they looked lackluster in the first half, but for some reason they put it all together. In my mind, the Packers should have won that game. 98% of that game, they should have won. But the 49ers played 100% and they finally finished it out. And I felt like that was a similar game with the 49ers and the Lions, where the 49ers were down, but they realized the mission at hand needed to be we need to come back and we need to get some things right because if not, we're going to lose this game. And they came out on the field, especially in the second half, and they did it. And I think one person to really call out and is their quarterback Brock Purdy because too many people I hear out there saying, "Oh, he's just a system quarterback." Any quarterback would have excelled in his position. And there are some degree, there's some extent where that is true with some of the things, but the qualities that Brock Purdy does have that set him aside is his ability to kind of see the field in a way that Patrick Mahomes can and make plays when everything and when all the whole hope is lost, in terms of, oh, my receivers are covered. There's no one I can give the ball to. And using his legs to pick up extra yardage. And that, I think, was the nail in the coffin for the Lions, because his legs extended drives, which then led to touchdowns. And there really isn't anybody else on the 49ers that was the key to that. It was Brock Purdy running and scrambling and picking up the needed yards the 49ers needed. And of course, you had Brandon Ayuk's crazy catch off of Kindle Vildor's helmet. And I mean, it's, you can't make that stuff up. How like it was literally in Kindle Vildor's hands, and it bounces off his helmets right into the hands of Brandon Ayuk, picks up some 50 yards or something like that. That, of course, helped. So maybe luck is on the side of the 49ers as well, but I can't stress enough, Brock Purdy's legs really saved the 49ers when they were in pinches on third down and they needed to pick up that extra yardage when nothing seemed open. So I'm kind of torn, like I said, because I do agree that the Lions really shot themselves in the foot. But also on the flip side of the coin, I do think Brock Purdy had this natural ability that he needed to be that leader that led this team back from the deficit that they had put themselves in the first half. And a lot of it can even be put on his shoulders for doing so. So, yeah, that's what I'll say. That's what I'll say. My thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think Brock Purdy is really underrated, as much as it pains me as a Cowboys fan to admit that. If you look at any of the advanced stats that, separate quarterback production from like wide receiver production, he was still topping the charts in all of those. Granted, I had read an article recently that said quarterbacks in a Shanahan style offense are automatically like favored by statistical models that try to separate receivers from quarterbacks just because how well the scheme operates, how open it makes receivers. So the quarterback seems more efficient than they might if they were in a separate scheme. But
Hmm.
regardless, I mean, Brock Purdy has showed up in pretty much every moment you could expect him to. Anytime they needed a play to be made, like you said, whether it was with his legs or with his arm, he was the one who did it. He's a great leader for that team. He's a great player. I don't think he's just a system quarterback. I think the Niners really found someone special in the seventh round there with the last pick in the draft. But another guy on the team who's also pretty special, Christian McCaffrey. Man,
Absolutely.
when I watch him, oh my goodness, the way he moves his body, it's not natural. The way he can cut and like change direction and accelerate off of a break. There's no one else in the league who can run like that. That last touchdown he had to seal the win for the 49ers, oh my goodness, it was I have never seen someone run like that. I'm only 22 years old, so I've never had really a chance to watch like Emmett Smith or Barry Sanders or anyone like that. For my money, he is the best running back I've ever seen play football, since I started watching the sport actively. I can't think of anyone who has run the ball more efficiently, more explosively, and for, the duration that he has. Because you think about a guy like
Derrick
Ezekiel,
Henry.
well, Derrick Henry, he's pretty good, but I
I'm
don't
kidding.
think
I'm
he's that
kidding.
good.
I'm kidding.
I will say Derrick Henry is the only other guy I can think of who's been able to run the ball as well for as long as McCaffrey has.
Yeah.
Because I think about every other running back that's been big, in the past 10, 15 years. Ezekiel Elliott, Todd McGurley, any running back you care to name, they lasted maybe 2 or 3 years and they kind of fizzled out. McCaffrey, I think, was drafted the year after Ezekiel Elliott. So he has been dominating at this level for what, 8 years now?
Yeah.
7 years maybe. Yeah, it's been a long time. Running backs are not supposed to be that good for that long. They're supposed to fizzle out after a little bit. And McCaffrey has never fizzled out, not even once. He's only getting better as each year goes by, which is insane to me to think about. No matter how much they use him, he had over 2,000 scrimmage yards this year, and I have zero concern that he's gonna somehow drop off next year. He is probably one of the most impressive players, if not the most impressive player in the entire NFL right now, and I think he's going to continue to be a huge part of why the 49ers are going to have success. Honestly, going back to our last conversation, we were talking about who do we think should be MVP. McCaffrey would be right up there with Mahomes for me. He is insane. I hate it so much because it's a 49ers player that I'm talking about, but it's just insane to watch him play football. I feel lucky that I get to watch him play football.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I was literally right when you said that, that was gonna be like my like little point that I was gonna add in. I was gonna be like, we talked about, Lamar, the potentiality of like if you did think about the offseason, probably who would you put in instead? And yeah, McCaffrey was as soon as we started talking about him, I was like, yeah, that's probably who I would put even above Mahomes. Just with how special he has been season and postseason for the 49ers. You're absolutely right. When he's not in the lineup, it's noted. And there's a reason why the 49ers lost those 3 games in the season when for most of them he was not in the lineup and he was down with an injury. And so you kind of see that how important he is in that offense, that style of offense, and how much that he helped the 49ers win this game against the Lions and even come back. And you're absolutely right. Of course, my bias towards Derrick Henry, he will always be the greatest in my mind. But Christian McCaffrey is up there as well. It's certainly special with both of those guys that they have been able to produce the results they have for as long as they have. And honestly, not to give a shout out to Derrick Henry, but he's had to deal with some offensive lines and some teams for in the most recent Titans years that haven't been as good, and he's still been able to perform. And so running backs like Henry and McCaffrey in this league that can last for many seasons, continue to produce likewise results, those are special players and special individuals. And there is no doubt in my mind that the 49ers are here not only because of Purdy, not only because of Deebo Samuel, not only because of Brandon Ayuk, Shanahan's system, their defense, whatever that may look like. Christian McCaffrey is a special player, and him being in their lineup gives them every chance to win a game, especially when time is on their side, especially when time is on their side. But we even saw that, with the Lions game where he was just as efficient in the second half and they were down by a number of touchdowns. So, yeah, very, very special player. Definitely would be my MVP pick if you did include kind of postseason stat lines and stuff like that and playability. But absolutely, yeah, McCaffrey is a special, special player.
For sure. He was drafted in 2017, so that's the year
Okay,
after Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott. But it's still insane that he has been so durable for that long, considering
absolutely.
all the running backs besides Derrick Henry who have been drafted like around that time period are just out of the league now or just back up somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they're not getting the primary snaps anymore. So yeah, super, super, super. Yeah, they're superhumans, honestly, is what comes to my mind when I think of like them, because you're right, because this in this league, running backs have maybe a couple years on them, and then they start to just fizzle out because of just the wear and tear on their bodies as the position dictates. So truly special guys that are able to be able to withstand that and be so efficient for so long. Really players
Yeah,
that you win. They're diamonds in the rough if you can pick them up, especially in the draft.
honestly, I think it was that expectation that, running backs only last for a few years is why McCaffrey was available for only a second round pick when the
Yeah,
49ers traded for him. If they thought he was going to stay at that level or even get better from where he was, which arguably he did, I think they would have had to pay a lot more for him than just a second round pick.
absolutely. Yeah, no, and that's what makes this kind of like upcoming off season. It's I'm kind of entering it with a heavy heart because of the uh, different rumors of Derrick Henry moving on from the Titans. And I really hope that, if he does move on from the Titans, which would break my heart, but I completely understand, of course, as he has other things on his mind and may not be being and returning back to the Titans locker room. But I do hope that if the Titans do get rid of him, hopefully it'll be for something much more than a second round pick, because he is truly a special player. And those kind of special players automatically raise the playing room around them drastically. And you saw that with McCaffrey and pretty much Carolina giving him away for free. Not really, but, and how much he has helped this 49ers offense become the offense that it needs to be to reach the Super Bowl again. In has it been 6 years now? They haven't been back to the Super Bowl in 6 years. I think so. I think it's been 6 years.
No, it's been less than that because they were in the Super Bowl in 2020.
Okay, so never mind. It's 4 years. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was the last Chiefs Niners Super Bowl.
Okay, gotcha. So that's 4 years, but still, even that, sometimes those tiny key pieces can go such a long way. Um, and yeah, they need to be they both Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey need to be treated as uh rare commodities because they are on any team. So hope he comes back though. Derrick Henry, come back to the Titans, please. We need you more than anything. So
I don't know,
hope
man. He
will love
said
us.
goodbye to the fans. That doesn't seem
I
good.
know. I know. That was tragic when I was there in person. I was like, no, you don't need to do this. You can stop this and just promise us that you'll return next season. But yeah, very emotional time, but we'll see. We'll see what he does. Who knows? Maybe Brian Callahan can bring him back on board. Because there was good news in terms of Brian Callahan saying that, having someone, and that's the great thing and why I'm super hyped on this Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon kind of remodeling of the Titans is because he came out and said that, a player like Derrick Henry doesn't come around in every single draft. And he's super, and to any offense, he would be such a key and critical piece. And that he would not basically be opposed to figuring out a way to bring him back, pretty much is what he said, without saying like he's bringing him back or we're not bringing him back, kind of the best way possible. But those kind of key lines before that, and I'm paraphrasing, that's not exactly what he said, but he said something along those lines, kind of what we're talking about with how special Christian McCaffrey is as a running back and running backs like him. You know, that's something that, in a head coach moving forward, that expectation and that viewpoint on that position and those players is big. Especially if keeping him around is going to be, or keeping Derrick Henry around, I should say, is going to be in his agenda to do.
Okay. This is kind of off topic, but I have to know who do you think are the top three most likely teams for Derrick Henry to be on next season?
Oh man, honestly, if Derrick Henry doesn't believe that the Titans can go chase a ring, I think that is going to be probably pretty big in his mind. Um, he's pretty much achieved everything up until that point. So if that's the case, I've seen rumors that the Cowboys would be interested in with Tony Pollard becoming a free agent,
For
signing him
sure.
on, which I know you'd be happy about. I would be devastated, and that would just be life for the next football season. How do you root against a guy like Derrick Henry? But anyways, uh, then I think potentially the Eagles could be looking at him too. So he could be going to two different teams in the NFC East. And the reason why I think that could be a piece that, maybe Nick Sirianni is wanting to add, or even just, the Eagles team in general wants to add, not only is Derrick Henry such an explosive player, but that I felt has been kind of like one of the positions that, they got rid of Miles Sanders this offseason. They brought in DeAndre Swift, and that the run game kind of just ended for them, which I think was part of the problem for their like kind of losing game, kind of skid. There really wasn't a lot of incorporation for the run game, and when it was not well incorporated. So maybe they could be looking in a direction of like, okay, we need to bring in this veteran guy who automatically raises the running back room higher than it's ever been. So they could be looking towards Derrick Henry, and then I've also seen the rumors from even last year. So my third team on that. So from the Cowboys, Eagles, my third team would be the Ravens. And there's been already a speculation of like, oh my goodness, how crazy of a backfield would Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry being on the same team be in terms of an explosive offense. So those rumors have not really ended necessarily, especially as he's kind of come out and did his farewell speech, or some have kind of concluded that it is his farewell speech to Tennessee. But those would be my top three landing spots for him: Cowboys, Eagles, and then the Ravens.
Yeah, I think all three of those teams make a ton of sense. One other team I would float out there is the Buffalo Bills because I know they've been
Yep.
looking for the long-term answer at running back for a while now. And obviously Derrick Henry wouldn't be that, but I think he would be a great bridge player until they could find some other bell cow back. I know they have that one guy, what's his name, Cook, James Cook, who is pretty
Yeah,
good at the end of the season, but he doesn't have the same sort of power or ferociousness that Derrick Henry would bring. And I know they were interested in Derrick Henry
they
last
were.
year, I think, when there were talks about
Hmm.
possibly trading him. So yeah, any of those three teams that you mentioned or the Bills, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on any of them.
Absolutely. And I think that whatever that team is, if he does decide to move on, I'm going to keep saying if he does decide, because I'm still believing in my heart he will come back home to play another season and he'll retire a Titan forever. But not after this next season. Whenever he does decide to retire, he'll retire a Titan. But I think if he does, it will be to a team who has the best shot of gearing up to win it all now. And I think all four of those teams have that. And even though Derrick Henry may not be the long term answer at running back, it is the answer at, okay, we need to do everything we can to bring in a player that can lead us to winning a Super Bowl, which is what our franchise has been trying to do for forever, how long, put X years, whatnot. And the Bills are definitely that team. Ravens are definitely that team. Eagles are, and so are the Cowboys. So like both, all they would all fit that.
Now, here's one more suggestion for you. Not that there's anything out there suggesting this right now, but just something that occurred to me. What if the San Francisco 49ers are like, we want another guy to complement Christian McCaffrey, and then they got
Oh my goodness.
Derrick Henry and put him back there with McCaffrey at the same time? Can you imagine how unstoppable that running game would be?
There has to be a rule against that. Like that team would be too overpowered at the running back position for them to even exist. It'd be like, okay, guys, we already conceded. You know what? We're just not even going to play defense. We're just going to give you a touchdown every drive. Just give us a chance to take it down the field and score.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
would be crazy.
honestly, if the Niners could improve to another level, which I don't even know if that's possible, I think adding Derrick Henry would be a part of that. Just having two generational running backs at the same time on your team, that would be insane.
Oh, it would be. It would be. I think they probably wouldn't, just because of cost wise to
For
have
sure.
two top
Yeah.
running back. But I mean, honestly, the possibilities are endless in terms of that. And I think if Derrick Henry pretty much has his pick at any of the teams, who would throw a bit in, because any team in the National Football League with Derrick Henry as their running back, I don't care if people say he's old, he's washed, he can't do whatever he can do. Just look at the stats, look at everything that he's been able to do so far, including these most recent years with poor O lines blocking for him, with poor offensive, run games. It he would elevate any team. And so, if he wanted to chase the ring, he has that ability. If he's wanted to even chase money wise, he has even that ability to go with the highest bidder. So, honestly, all eyes are on him, but I'm gonna still say he's gonna be coming home. He's gonna play for Tennessee. So, I'm gonna still hope that that is the case. But yeah, I do think, but crazy. It would be crazy with the 49ers though. McCaffrey and Henry on the same team,
Yeah.
unstoppable.
You get both of those guys on the field at the same time. I don't even know how you try to defend that.
I know, I know. It's crazy. It was funny when I was watching some of the Pro Bowl games this past Thursday, and I was watching the dodgeball kind of game where Derrick Henry did take out Micah Parsons. Rob, he caught his dodgeball, eliminating him. Not to gloat or anything, but that just shows Titan dominance over Cowboys. But I will say it was funny because I was sitting here and, I can imagine what it would be like for a 49ers backfield, or even like a Baltimore Ravens backfield, where you had Lamar and Derrick Henry, and you have Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. But I was sitting here and I was watching some of those games, and my girlfriend kind of turned to me and she was like, "Now, which one's Derrick Henry?" And I like pointed him out on the screen, and she was like, "He's so huge." And he is a monster. So can you imagine like that backfield with the speed and quickness? And McCaffrey's not like that big of a guy. He's like more of this like angry man kind of running, like Pacheco, I think, when I kind of see him running. But like, can you imagine like just the small, like it's not, McCaffrey's not small, but like the different size difference where you just have this bruiser and you have the other guy just like the cuts and oh my goodness, that would
Would
be,
be unfair.
it would be unfair.
The
Yeah,
rest of the NFL must pray that that never happens because that would be
absolutely.
insane. It would be impossible to defend. If you put two of
It
them
would.
out at the same time and you don't know where the handoff is going, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Imagine being a linebacker. You're like, oh man, do I have to like try and stop McCaffrey? Or do I have to try and tackle McC Like, oh my God, I can't even
Exactly.
going through that thought process. Oh, please
Yeah.
no, I don't want
Yeah.
this to happen.
I know that would be super scary. That would definitely be not the most easiest walk in the park, as they might say. But anyways, we're kind of getting off track because of course Derrick Henry is so great and just absolutely murders Cowboys players at dodgeball. But that's not the point. We're gonna come back to the Super Bowl, and now we have not the Lions, I'm sorry, the 49ers and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to be wearing red. That has been announced. The 49ers in white, which I don't know. I don't like the 49ers in white personally. I think they look better in their red jerseys, but both teams can't wear red. So there's that.
I don't like them in any color, to be honest.
Well, that's fair, Rob. That's fair. With your background and how they always just beat up on the Cowboys come playoff time. But yeah, so the colors have been announced. Red for the Chiefs, white for the 49ers, and we're coming up not this Sunday, but next Sunday. Rob, who do you have? Or before we make our picks, let's not jump into this. What do you think are going to be some key elements to look for in this game for the success of both teams?
Well,
What do you think should be some interesting matchups?
first things first, I think you have to look and see if the 49ers have another slow start because they were able to overcome that against Jared Goff. They were able to overcome that against Jordan Love. I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
So for the 49ers to really have a chance at this, I don't think they can let themselves get down 17 points again. They will not be able to come back against Mahomes. He is just too clutch. He always makes the play in the moment to win the game. If the 49ers want to win, they're going to have to stay competitive throughout the entire game. So that's the first thing I think you have to look at. The second thing that I would look at is how the Chiefs wide receivers and weapons match up with the 49ers secondary, especially because the Niners secondary has not been good, especially as the season has ended. Outside of what's his name, the one good corner they have used to be on the Cowboys. I forget, Travarius Ward.
yes.
Outside of him, their secondary has been really, really bad to end the season. But the Chiefs wide receivers have been really, really bad all season long. So if I were the Chiefs, I think I would be trying to get Travis Kelce out wide. I would be trying to get Rashee Rice matched up with the corner that's not Travarius Ward because those are your two best weapons and you don't want them matched up on their top corner. Because if you can get that, I think you're going to have some good matchups. You're going to be able to move the ball. Uh, they've also struggled to stop the run recently. So, with Pacheco and that dominant Kansas City offensive line, I think you'll have that going for you. It'd really be a matter of if you can get your guys open against that 49ers secondary, find a way to scheme them away from Travarius Ward. And obviously, they have two great linebackers who probably could cover Kelce pretty effectively if you give them the chance to. So, you're going to have to figure out a way around that. And then I think the third thing that I would be looking at is just you have two really brilliant offensive minds going toe to toe. And the last few times they met, Andy Reid has pretty much gotten the upper hand in every single one of those encounters. So I think Shanahan is going to have something maybe a little different than he's had in times past going up against Reid. Or else I'd expect the same result. I'd expect Andy Reid to beat the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, two great points, I think, and that's something I think everyone is going to be trying to look for. But I absolutely agree. I think something else to kind of look on is, this is Brock Purdy's first Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes is kind of a veteran playing in Super Bowls. So you already have that kind of like unbalance in terms of quarterback experience playing in the big game. And I think you're right. Is the 49ers going to falter? And I think a lot of that look is on even Brock Purdy. And I think, what kind of Brock Purdy are we going to see playing? Are we going to see the Brock Purdy that we saw at the nearing the end of the kind of the game against the Lions, where he's pretty much doing superhuman stuff in terms of getting his offense to make those plays when everything else seems to go not their way? Or are we going to see the start that we saw with him against the Green Bay Packers, where it looked like the Packers, defense, which is decent. It's not the Chiefs' defense in terms of stopping offenses, like the explosive offense of the Ravens. with the Green Bay Packers defense being able to shut him down, is the Chiefs offense going to shut him down? And I think that's going to also be something to look at too. Will this Chiefs defense, which was able to stop the explosiveness of Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens offense, are they going to be able to stop the explosiveness of the 49ers offense with Christian McCaffrey, with Deebo Samuel, with Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy and other weapons that they have? That's going to be, I think, one of those things that, will be a big thing to look for. And that is if Brock Purdy can find his way and find those routes and cut through the Chiefs defense, then I think that Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense will be able to make some leeway. But absolutely, I mean, you put the ball in Mahomes' hands, and that's also the struggle is, will Mahomes and Kelsey and Rashid Rice and Pacheco be able to cut up the 49ers defense like the Lions did and like the Packers were able to? And that was something I will say I didn't see coming postseason. The 49ers defense, other than for a couple games, and the Ravens game is kind of the big one that we all kind of saw later in the season. But I will say that I did not see that coming into the postseason. The 49ers defense playing, not that they're playing bad, but they're not playing like the top tier unit that they can be. And I think that's going to be super important moving forward for them, especially stopping Mahomes' elusiveness and his kind of, jack of all trades quarterbacking, where he has his weapons, but he can sometimes do things that you don't expect him to do, or scheme up, or Andy Reid scheming up different plays that, favor Mahomes' elusiveness and whatnot. How are you going to be able to attack this Chiefs offensive line that has held up pretty strong against even the pass rush of the Baltimore Ravens? How is that going to stand up against some of the top tier San Francisco pass rushers? Are they going to be able to get to Mahomes? So really on both sides of the ball, offensive and defensive side, whether you're talking about Chiefs or 49ers, those matchups going up against each other, they have faltered in certain situations and they have dominated in others. And I think it's going to be interesting to see which unit, or depending on which unit you're talking about, which one shows up in the key moments of the game, and which one doesn't, and which one falters.
Yeah, well, one thing I would like to point out, the 49ers played two really good, really elite defenses all year long that are on the same level as Kansas City. And that was the Cleveland Browns defense and the Baltimore Ravens
Yep.
defense. And they lost both of those games. So
Interesting.
they
Yeah.
have not had a good track record against elite defenses this year. And that's absolutely what they're going up against, the Kansas City. So for my money, I think I'm going to have to pick the Kansas City Chiefs in this game, just because the Niners going up against that defense when they've struggled to produce against good defenses all year with Brock Purdy, who's never been in a Super Bowl before at quarterback, going up against Patrick Mahomes, arguably the greatest quarterback of our generation, definitely the greatest quarterback of our generation, possibly one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Uh, it seems like everything is lining up for the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game.
Yeah. And of course, that is not including your Cowboys bias against the 49ers at all. That's just your pure, honest, unbiased opinion.
I would never allow my Cowboys fandom to influence my take on something. Okay,
Of course. Yeah. Well,
never.
I don't even know why I would even bring that up, because,
No,
you're
no, no.
that honest of an individual when it comes to that.
Always.
You know what? I'm gonna do the unthinkable again, and I'm gonna bet against Patrick Mahomes, because I think that this um this 49ers team that evolved in the second half of the Detroit Lions game is going to step on the field in Las Vegas, and they're going to look like the 49ers that we've seen them to be throughout the season, and winning in clutch moments. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this is going to be a blowout either way. I think it's going to be tooth and nail down to the wire. But I think Brock Purdy is going to be able to surprise a lot of folks, and I think that they are going to be a team that in the waning moments of the game, they're going to be able to shock Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I do worry still about the offensive weapons for the Chiefs. I do think that the 49ers are going to be able to shut down Travis Kelce in ways that even the Ravens were unable to do. I felt like in that game, even Roquan Smith and some of those other linebackers, they were more focused on Mahomes than they were Kelce. And Kelce just got open. And I just don't think that 49ers are going to make that mistake, especially with Greenlaw in the back, being an expert veteran at his game. I think he's going to be able to lock down Kelce in a way that may not make him as utilized as Kelce has been the past couple games. I do expect a Kelce touchdown just because then they're going to show Taylor Swift and now the Swifties are going to go crazy. And it's probably going to happen, not just because, oh, it's rigged, because it's not. It's just Patrick Mahomes and Kelce have such a great dynamic duo in the red zone that I expect there to be at least one Mahomes to Kelce touchdown. But yeah, I think it's going to be close, and I think the 49ers are going to take it. I think George Kittle, my Iowa boy, is going to show up in big ways for Brock Purdy in this game. Um, we saw Lamar Jackson being able to make big plays to his tight ends, whether it be Likely or Mark Andrews in the Chiefs game. And, you also did see some times that the Chiefs defense did falter, even with Zay Flowers. He had a big game despite that fumble. So, how are they going to be able to cover guys like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk? That's going to be something worth to see. But I think it's going to be a close game. 49ers are going to take it in less than a one score game. I think it's going to be a 1 or 2 point difference between the two for this Super Bowl final score.
That's what the betting odds are saying right now. San Francisco is favored by 2 points. So
Okay.
that's much exactly what betting experts expect. I'm going to say the Chiefs will win by at least three. That's my prediction.
Okay.
I think they're going to make this not so close game, at least to start off. And I think the Niners will mount a comeback attempt, but they're not going to be able to get over the hump just because they're playing against Mahomes and Andy Reid. So I think they'll make it close at the end, but they won't be able to get all the way.
Gotcha. And do you think Taylor Swift and her potential presence in Las Vegas, I know you're going to love this question, has any effect on the Chiefs' ability to perform in Las Vegas?
Yes, it's the entire reason I'm actually picking the Chiefs is because Taylor
Okay.
Swift will be. Yeah.
That's fair. That is completely fair. I always knew you were a big Swiftie at heart, Rob. I know her music flows through your veins, so this pick doesn't surprise me at all. It's the anti-cowboy or the anti-49ers cowboy bias in there with your love of Taylor Swift that really just is shouting the Chiefs victory to me. So,
Yeah, hopefully the Chiefs could just shake off the 49ers.
oh, look at that! It has to be
Of
his favorite song, guys. It has to be.
course it is.
How many times have you listened to that song this past day?
At least 11.
At least 11. Yep. I thought you were going to say 87 for Kelsey's number, but that's okay.
God, I hate my
Speaking
celebrities.
of kind of Kelsey, there has been rumors that with Jason Kelsey's retirement following this season, there has been rumors that if Travis Kelsey wins this Super Bowl, or even if he doesn't, since he's made it this far, that the Kelsey brothers will retire together. Do you think there's any validity to that? Do you think that Travis Kelsey will retire potentially if he wins this Super Bowl, or if he doesn't? Or do you think he's going to come back to Kansas City for another year?
I think if he wins the Super Bowl, I could definitely see him retiring, going out on top with the whole Taylor Swift thing happening and, being like the most popular football player in the league or whatever. I could definitely see him being like, you know what, I'm done, like, going to training camp and like working out every day and eating right all the time. Like, I just want to enjoy my life as like now a superstar with Taylor Swift and like Jason Kelsey and this podcast we have. Uh, if they lose, I don't think so because
Yeah.
Travis Kelsey is a competitor, and I don't think you can hang up your cleats with that bitter taste in your mouth if you're as much of a competitor as Travis Kelsey is. So I would expect the outcome of the game to determine whether or not he ends up retiring.
Yeah. And that would be honestly a big blow to the kind of the Chiefs offense with how, dynamic Mahomes and Kelsey has been. Looking forward to the next season, depending on what happens with that. Um, but yeah, interesting. Awesome. Awesome. So there you have it, folks. Those are our picks for the Chiefs versus the 49ers Super Bowl preview. opposite sides, but that's okay. Brother fought brother before, and one will come out victorious. So we'll see who that is. Now, moving on to coach hirings. Um, we have received kind of more recent news that Dan Quinn is going to be the Commanders' new head coach. Of course, one of your guys, Rob. Um, what do you think of this? Do you think this is a good move for the Cowboys, good move for the Commanders, bad move for both teams, a little bit of both? What is it?
Yeah, it's definitely not great for the Cowboys because they have a really terrible track record when it comes to hiring defensive coordinators. Since 2000, Dan Quinn is probably the first good defensive coordinator we've had. He was super successful for the past 2 years. Obviously, slipped up a little bit this year, but there were a lot of injuries on defense, and some people say that's the reason why. We lost our starting cornerback, both our starting linebackers, and you could kind of see maybe why the defensive failures this year weren't entirely on Dan Quinn. So I'm definitely not happy that he's leaving. I think the worst thing though is that with him, he's bringing Joe Witt Jr. It was like this defensive genius that we've had on our staff for a little while now. He's like I think he was our linebackers coach this year, maybe our secondary coach. I'm not entirely, no, he's not our secondary coach. He's our linebackers coach. There was a lot of optimism in the Cowboys building that he would be the defensive coordinator to succeed Dan Quinn. But he loves Dan Quinn so much, he's going with Dan Quinn to Washington to be his
Wow.
defensive coordinator there, betraying the Cowboys for their division rival.
Wow.
Um, I think the Commanders made a brilliant decision going to get Dan Quinn. I think they made a mistake in not hiring Mike McDonald before the Seahawks did. But with what they had left, I think Dan Quinn was a great choice because he knows how to run a football team. He knows how to create a winning culture. I think he's brought a great guy with him to be their defensive coordinator. And I've seen a lot of rumors that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be going to the Commanders as the new offensive coordinator, which I think is a good role for Kings. Is it Kingsbury or Kingsbury? I don't remember.
I think
Regardless,
it's Kingsbury. And actually,
Kingsbury.
since that report, Kingsbury's actually saying that he's still not going to come back to the NFL. So he's reported to have said that he's done
Oh,
with
okay.
looking at offensive coordinator positions, at least for this year. And who knows if he changes his mind, but absolutely that would be a dynamic duo right there with the OC and DC in Washington. But yeah, it looks like it won't be Cliff Kingsbury. I think it's Kingsbury, not Cliff's. Yeah, whatever it is. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I think the Commanders are going to have a great coaching staff. They have a ton of draft capital to rebuild with, ton of cap space to rebuild with. I think Dan Quinn can certainly build a winning team that's a lot more scary than any Washington team has been for the Cowboys in a long time. So I'm not looking forward to that. I've seen a lot of rumors the Cowboys are looking at Ron Rivera as a potential replacement, as well as Mike Zimmer. I am fully aboard the Mike Zimmer train. He was a great defensive coordinator pretty much every year he was one. Obviously, his head coaching career didn't work out with Minnesota, but that was just because they had a lot of moving pieces with their personnel. I don't think that was because of his defensive coaching. He also has been a very effective coach against Shanahan style offenses, which has been the Cowboys' Achilles heel the past 3 years. So I'm fully on board with bringing in Mike Zimmer, whereas I'm fully opposed to Ron Rivera, who has been a very bad defensive coordinator no matter where he's been. So I do not want Ron Rivera. Mike Zimmer all the way is where I would be hoping the Cowboys look. But they have a track record of making bad decisions at that spot, so I'm not too optimistic.
there has been in the last couple days, especially after this release that Dan Quinn's going to be moving on from the Cowboys, that Jerry Jones's relationship with Bill Belichick, there could be some things in the work that since Belichick, was not hired as a head coach this offseason, that he could be brought back as the potential new defensive coordinator for Dallas moving forward. Do you think that that is you know, a point that could be something that actually does happen, or do you think that's just kind of people wanting Belichick, but nothing really in the works?
Now, we said this a full week ago. We both agreed that Bill Belichick as defensive coordinator of the Cowboys was certainly a possibility. And now, seeing how things have played out, I still think it's in play. Bill has a lot of pride, and there's a part of me that thinks he wouldn't want to be a defensive coordinator anywhere. But at the same time, being the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, is a lot different than being a defensive coordinator on any other team. And more than that, with Mike McCarthy kind of being in a lame duck year, if Belichick takes over that defense and it does really well, that would perfectly position him to take over as the head coach if McCarthy ends up being fired after this season. So I think there's some advantages that come with being the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys this year specifically that you wouldn't have in any other position. So I would not be surprised if Bill Belichick decides he wants to coach this year. He takes the defensive coordinator job of the Dallas Cowboys because like you said, Jerry Jones has emphatically stated how much he would love to work with Bill Belichick. They're close friends, like personally outside of football related stuff. So if Bill Belichick wants that job, I don't think there'd be any hesitation on the Cowboys side from offering it to him. It's just a matter of if Bill is willing to accept the defensive coordinator position after being, the greatest head coach of all time for the past 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's also been some rumors that Rivera's actually could go to the Eagles and be their defensive coordinator. Um, how do you feel about that potentiality?
They hired Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator last week, so that's
Oh,
not.
for oh, I meant offensive coordinator. Did they? Oh, they already hired their offensive coordinator, didn't
They
they?
hired Kellen Moore, former
That's
Cowboys
right.
coordinator,
That's
as
right.
their new offensive coordinator, which I am not happy about because he was a great play caller for most of the season when he was here in Dallas. It's just in the playoffs, his play calling would get a little wonky. So, hopefully that carries over with him to Philadelphia and they, make some ridiculous calls like running it up the middle with 13 seconds left, down a touchdown in the fourth quarter.
Of
I would
course.
love to see Philadelphia do some stuff like that in the playoffs.
So with so last year they got rid of their offensive coordinator because of failures in the playoffs. This year it seems like Dan Quinn is leaving. Not necessarily the blame's on him, but he's now leaving the organization. Do you see this future upcoming season to be maybe they aren't removing the right people in the organization that's been stopping them from playoff success? Or do you think that the potential moving on of Dan Quinn could actually benefit the Cowboys making a postseason push to a championship or even more to the Super
The,
Bowl?
de- the departure of Dan Quinn could benefit the Cowboys, certainly if they find the right guy to replace him. If they find a guy who knows how to stop the Kyle Shanahan offense, which that was Dan Quinn's one weakness. His defenses could not stop Shanahan style offenses. If they find a guy who can consistently do that and stop a team like the Packers or the 49ers from destroying us in the playoffs or in the regular season for that matter, that would be a huge improvement. Do I have the confidence in the Cowboys to go out and actually find the guy? No, not even a little bit, because they have never, since I became a fan of them, actually spent amount of time or resources on bringing in a quality defensive coordinator. So I fully expect Ron Rivera to be named the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys just because that would be so in line with what they normally do. Although I have my fingers crossed for Mike Zimmer. But yeah, if the Cowboys don't win it all next year, Mike McCarthy's gone. He's in the last year of his contract. There's not going to be a renewal if they don't win it all next year. That's his only chance at keeping his job. And on one hand, I'm happy that they have such a high bar for him. But on the other hand, putting that much pressure on him, like every single game he's coaching for his job, that doesn't seem like a recipe for success. Most instances I can remember of this, it always ends up with that coach not even making it through the entire next season because his team just comes out so flat. They collapse and he ends up getting fired like halfway through. And I'm very worried that that's what's going to happen with McCarthy. The Cowboys have a lot of talent and they should be in the playoffs again. They should be in contention to win the division again. They should win the division, to be honestly, considering who's they're competing with them for it. But you never know when you have a coaching situation like this where it's a lame duck year and all the pressure is riding on that coach to win the Super Bowl or get fired. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, this is probably McCarthy's last year, but if he manages to go out next year and win it all, then I'm more than happy for him to receive the biggest extension in the history of NFL head coaches. So
Yeah. Interesting. Bill Belichick, the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Has a little ring
certainly,
to it.
Yeah.
One of our close friends would be probably in utter pain for the rest of his life if that ever happened, as he is a devout Patriots fan and more so Bill Belichick lover. So, but if that happens, yeah, he will be devastated. But interesting, interesting. Yeah. Well, it would be fascinating if it seems like Washington and Dallas are going to do a little swap where they they trade Quinn for Rivera. But very interesting.
Want that. You
Yeah.
have no idea how badly I don't want that. Please.
Well, believe in Jerry Jones, I guess, is my best
Oh man,
advice for you.
I don't want to believe in Jerry Jones anymore. I don't know if you saw this, but a report came out this past Wednesday that Jerry Jones' plan was to fire Mike McCarthy after the playoff loss to the Packers and replace him with Jason Witten, the Cowboys
Oh,
type legend who had never coached in the NFL before. He's only ever coached high school football. He was going to take him from a high school football coach to an NFL head coach in one offseason. He had to be talked out of that. So just hearing that concerns me a lot about the future of the team.
yeah, that's kind of concerning, I would say. It's a little,
Just a little bit,
yeah,
yeah.
just a little bit. Yeah, nothing to like, get crazy about, but
No, no,
definitely
there's nothing to worry about. It's all under
no.
control.
Of course, of course.
There's no concern on my end. I'm so confident they're gonna just make all the right decisions about coaches.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, kind of speaking about coaches, it wasn't just Dan Quinn that was named a coach. Actually, the Panthers, Falcons, and Seahawks, they all have hired their future head coaches for this upcoming season, leaving Belichick and Vrabel out of jobs, which is very interesting on for both of those people's career as coaches in the NFL. But the Panthers hired Dave Canales. I think that's how you pronounce it. Rob, what do you think about this hire? Was this a good hire for the Panthers, or did the Panthers mess up this like they did the first round pick with Bryce Young? Yes, I said that.
Well, I think this is a brilliant hire for Carolina because Canales has a history of developing quarterbacks and having them produce like the best season of their career underneath him. I think he was with the Rams when Jared Goff was there, right? He helped Jared Goff have one of the better seasons of his career. And then he was with the Buccaneers for Baker Mayfield's best season of his career. He just kind of built like a reputation as someone who can build a quarterback into having the best season of their career. And if Carolina has any chance of salvaging this whole Bryce Young situation, if he's going to turn into like a really good NFL starter someday, I think this is the perfect guy to lead that effort. Granted, they will probably not have a lot of capital to build around him with. They're going to be missing their first round pick this year. They don't have anyone good at wide receiver still. So they're going to have to find a way to replenish the talent on that roster to give, Young a chance. But with that head coach, I think they position themselves the best way possible to see a lot of advancement from their quarterback in the future.
Yeah, and I think instead of Jared Goff and the Rams, you were thinking about Geno Smith and the Seahawks because that's where he was
Oh,
at
you're right. You're
prior.
right.
But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, absolutely, I agree. I think this is a good hire. I do think the pick for Bryce Young was not the best idea. And we've kind of seen that play out this past season. But hey, there may still be hope. We've seen quarterbacks go through rough rookie seasons and turn into great players. Peyton Manning, some of these other guys like that. So if they're going to help this kid um, succeed in the NFL, I think this was a brilliant hire as well. Not only did you see him bring out the best in Geno Smith in his entire career and even Baker Mayfield and back-to-back years. Could he do that with Bryce Young? Could we see this Panthers team actually moving the direction that everyone wanted to see them even this past season? Um, it's going to be something that, if they keep him around, I think that it's a positive direction the Panthers can go in. Um, the lack of draft capital and the lack of resources, I think, as you mentioned, Rob, is going to be a big telltale sign. I don't think that, this next year for the Panthers is going to be the year, just with, some of those pieces missing. But I do think that we can see a potential in Bryce Young making a leap and being a better quarterback than what we've seen so far in the league his rookie year.
for sure. I think it was definitely a great hire. It was a lot better than the hire, I think, by the Atlanta Falcons of Raheem Morris. That I have a huge issue with. He has a pretty bad track record being head coach because he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons a few years ago after Dan Quinn was fired. He has a lot of coaching experience. I think he was the head coach of a few other teams. I don't know why, with all the young, like exciting talent out there, you would go hire a retread who has never really been successful anywhere. I mean, if you were going to look for an experienced head coaching candidate, I feel like, Dan Quinn or Mike Vrabel would have been a much better direction to go. So that was probably the one hiring of the bunch that really confused me the most.
Yeah, I do not really like this pick either that the Falcons went with. I just for some reason this just doesn't feel like this was the best, you know, direction that the Falcons could have gone in with the way their franchise is right now. And I think that that's something that is worth maybe taking a little bit more time. I feel like there were better candidates on this roster, or on in the world of like available coaches in terms of coming in. Mike Vrabel could have been a great pick. I know they were in talks with Bill Belichick for a little bit. They had him come for two interviews. I don't know if that was in person or online. I forget if that was the case, if it was like more like Zoom meeting wise, but still, um, to go with this guy, I just don't know. I guess the only saving factor is that he he was with the Falcons when they made their kind of big um, playoff run, when they went all the way to the Super Bowl and then lost drastically to the Patriots. So there could be some talent there where he was the wide receivers coach and assistant head coach. So he could have had some kind of hand in that kind of, um, you know, management in terms of the game, in terms of the team leading, that team to the Super Bowl. So maybe there's some of that consideration. But I think you're right, Rob. I think that there's so much else that's on his resume of failures and not great coaching positions that just, maybe he'll wow us, but this just doesn't seem like the pick that the Falcons should have gone for in order to better their team next season. Um, and I think that that's we'll see it moving forward. But the Falcons have a lot of holes they need to fix on their team, anyways. And I think quarterback is going to be a big one for them because I don't think Desmond Ritter is going to be it, and I don't think that Taylor Heineke is going to be it. So I would actually not even be surprised if they even pick up a quarterback in the draft. But speaking of a better coach hiring, um, Mike McDonald went to the Seahawks, and I know that there was some initial thought process that Vrabel was actually going to go to Seattle. There were some of those kind of like leaked of like, oh, this would be a great fit, blah, 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 blah. But they actually have settled on Mike McDonald. And I even, was reading that the Seahawks were high on this guy. And the only reason that it didn't get done sooner was, of course, because the Ravens were still in the playoffs. As soon as, of course, the Ravens did lose to the Chiefs in the conference championship round, it was really not that big of a surprise that they hired this guy, as he was a top candidate in terms of coaching positions for head coach forward. So do you think this was a good pick, Rob, that the
Yeah,
Seahawks made?
absolutely. I think this was the best head coaching candidate in this entire cycle, even better than Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel. I mean, the way Mike McDonald ran that defense in Baltimore was just so impressive. The way he was able to generate so much pressure and so many sacks with, just a bunch of regular guys rushing the passer. It's genius. Like really, there's no other way to describe it. He is one of the greatest football minds in the game right now. He's clearly a great leader. He's young, he's going to be able to connect with the team really well. He has a lot of energy. I'm not sure why he wasn't the first candidate hired. I mean, I know the Ravens were still in the playoffs and some of these guys were hired, but like, I don't know why he wasn't the number one guy on every team's board. I don't know
Yeah,
why all the other teams hired people before he was even available. It just, I don't know why you wouldn't wait for a guy like that. So I'm definitely very impressed by the Seahawks managing to land him and bring him in as their new head coach.
absolutely. And we could even, see a resurgence of the Legion of Boom. Um, you know, uh, and that's, something that was has it been a decade? Is it been a decade now, really,
As
for that? Well, either way, the reemergence of that would be huge. Of course, he's a huge defensive minded guy. Um, you know, led the Michigan Wolverines to a Big Ten conference championship, all that type of stuff. Was one of the top 10 national defenses in college football that year, and then he was able to show what he could do on a professional level with the Ravens this past year, and so that kind of ability in creating a top tier defense can go a long way, especially in Seattle, where it has seemed like their defense has struggled more in the past kind of season or so. Um, it with the resurgence of a potential superstar type defense in terms of playability and caliber and execution on the field, the Seahawks already have a lot of offensive weapons that can just easily complement that. So with the resurgence of their defense being better under McDonald, I think this hire was really a good one, and it could even push the Seahawks into battling for the NFC West. Even with the 49ers, maybe not all the way, maybe not yet, but at least it's a step in the right direction for contending for that division.
for sure, absolutely, this was the best thing they could have done for their team.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, those were kind of the major coach hirings that came out, and now there is no team left in the NFL that has a head coach opening. Um, so Belichick is out, Vrabel is out. We'll see if they get hired as either offensive or defensive coordinators. Um, we'll see if their coaching jobs are still up in the air. We'll keep you all updated with that. Um, but but yeah, really overall, other than the Raheem Morris trade or Raheem Morris hire, I think all of these were really great picks for their respective teams, and I think it's at least the beginning step in the right direction for rebuilding some of these teams. And they all have some similarities in some of the things they need to fix, a lot of differences, but I think each hire really brought out what each team is wanting to focus on this upcoming offseason. And I think that's a big movement for not only the Seahawks and their hire of Mike McDonald, but even the Commanders with their talented roster that they have, and of course, well, Bryce Young with the Panthers and his development.
Yeah, for sure. All great hires outside of Raheem Morris, like you said. I think we'll see all three of the teams that made good head coaching decisions take a big step forward this year. And honestly, if the Falcons can go get like a good quarterback and a nice, like exciting young offensive coordinator, I could even see them taking a step forward as well, even with Raheem Morris as their head coach.
Yeah. What kind of quarterback would do that, do you think? Do you think that the Falcons, would potentially draft one in this upcoming draft as kind of like a rookie? Or do you think that they're gonna try to trade for a veteran free agent?
I think it depends who they end up with as their offensive coordinator. I
Mhm.
thought do they have an offensive coordinator yet? I don't remember if they hired one.
I don't remember either, but
Regardless of who their offensive coordinator is, though, I
yeah,
think they can't really draft a quarterback because all the like really good ones will be gone by the time their pick comes up, unless they have a way to trade up for one. Um, Obviously, I don't know how the draft will shake out, but my feeling is if they want a quarterback, they're going to have to trade for one. Whether that be by trading up in the draft or trading for a guy like Justin Fields or Ryan Tannehill or someone like that to, be a bridge player for them until they can, you know, find the draft capital to move up and get a new quarterback. Uh, there are some really good quarterbacks this year. Maybe a guy like Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix falls a little bit because of their performances late in the end of the season. If a guy like Michael Penix is sitting there at the Falcons pick, I think they would be foolish not to take him, honestly, because I think he would be a great piece to build around. So I think you'll see
Yeah.
the Falcons wait until the draft to see if one of those guys kind of falls into their range before they would make a move to trade for a quarterback like Justin Fields. But if they don't get one, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields was the guy they target.
Yeah. Well, we've seen the Falcons do some crazy things in the draft, and especially when they drafted Bijan Robinson with their eighth overall pick last draft. Um, I don't think a lot of people were expecting them to do that. So who knows? Maybe they'll shock us with picking up someone where we're like, hey, we didn't see that coming. And maybe it's a quarterback. Maybe it's someone that they're going to try to build their franchise around with Raheem Morris. But that will all tell in due time. Well, I think that with the NFL season coming to a well, pretty much the NFL season coming to a close with the Super Bowl coming up not this Sunday, but next Sunday, the UFL is starting to take shape. The UFL is starting to take shape, and it has been released to us that the official schedule release is happening this Monday, the 5th of February. And so that means that this league is about to kick off and it's going to be a fun ride. And so next episode, we will be tackling a lot more UFL stuff. We'll start to break down not only our individual teams with the Houston Roughnecks as my team and the Arlington Renegades as Rob's team, but we're going to also highlight some players from some of the other rosters. We'll talk about the schedule release. We'll maybe go into what we think, or how the season's going to turn out based on the rosters so far, and really start to tackle more UFL news for you all as the season gears up and as we start getting into the beginning weeks of this new spring league. So it's good to be excited. It's good to be hyped up. Make sure to try to figure out with this time that we have, maybe the team you want to follow moving forward. Um, as all of it is super fun, kind of learning the different players and whatnot. And we'll do some highlighting of some player profiles for you in the next upcoming podcasts. Some big news did break though, as the 7 out of the 8 teams for the UFL, they already had either previous or renewed or new, I should say, stadium contracts. But the big one that just recently hit the world of the United Football League was the Houston Roughnecks. It's now official. They will be playing in Rice Stadium in Houston. So that is where all of their home games will be played. So, quick shout out. If you're interested and in the Houston area, go make sure to support the league. Go out and see a game. Tickets should not be super expensive. So, it's always good to show your support, especially if you're there in person. So, all that fun stuff will be happening at Rice Stadium. But, like I mentioned before, we'll tackle all that stuff with the UFL. Next podcast, we'll wrap up the Super Bowl, wrap up the NFL season, and we'll start to transition from our fall football to our spring football. Rob, is there anything you'd like to add about this potential upcoming UFL news?
Yeah, coming on Monday the 5th, the UFL will be releasing their schedule for this year. So that'll be something really exciting for us to talk about on the next podcast.
Yeah,
UFL is just going to be so much fun this year with the combination of the XFL and the USFL. And if you don't have a team already, you should pick one because it's going to just be so much fun and it'll help you get through that off season where there's really nothing going on in the NFL.
absolutely. Absolutely. Great things. Positives all around. Positives all around. Who doesn't love year-round football? I know I do. So, um,
That's right.
yep. That's what we do here on the Redzone Rodeo. We talk about football and we bring it to you guys year round, regardless of season, regardless of off season. So we're gonna keep on doing that for you. And we want to thank you all for tuning in, of course, listening to us. checking out our clips, sharing them with your friends and family. Really do appreciate it. We did launch, in other news, we did launch our official Twitter page. So if you would like to subscribe to not only the channel, but also follow us on Twitter or X or whatever the name is now, make sure to go follow us at the Redzone Rodeo, as we'll be bringing you content on there as well. So a little bit of a shout out there. But other than that, I think that concludes this episode. Is there anything else, Rob, that we're forgetting?
No, that's pretty much it. It was a lot of fun talking football with you, Carson, as always, and I hope we get to make a lot more Redzone Rodeo episodes.
Absolutely, and we will. We will keep bringing this stuff to you guys. So thank you all again for joining, and we'll see you all next time. Signing off. See ya.